Hello, this is Andrii Bohdanovych, and you are watching Russia Unmasked. This is the space where we go beyond headlines to uncover the mechanisms of Russian propaganda, its global influence, and the wider context of world politics. Today, we are joined by British professor Tony Meehan, a researcher with many years of experience in media, information warfare, and societal transformations. His work helps us understand how disinformation campaigns are built and the role modern Russia plays in shaping them. Professor Meehan, it's a pleasure to have you with us.
Good morning, Andrei, and thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here with you too, and thank you for your invitation.
Okay, today we will discuss disinformation, Russia's role in the information space, and the key political developments shaping the world today, and what they mean for all of us. Let's start. And the first topic or first theme, Iran, energy and Western position. The world appears to be on the brink of a major conflict with Iran. Oil and gas prices are soaring, and the United States does not have full support from its allies. There is widespread uncertainty and confusion surrounding this potential war. The Economist has sarcastically referred to the US operation as blind fury, hinting at Donald Trump's political short-sightedness. And the question, what is the real position of Europe and the United Kingdom right now? Are they prepared for escalation, or are they trying to avoid it?
I think, in fairness, it would be reasonable to say that they're trying to avoid it. Many, as you know, none of them were aware of the attack prior to it happening, and therefore they were as confused as anything else. And when Trump now today is calling on a $200 billion budget to complete the war in Ukraine, in Iran, then it is difficult for them to say, yes, okay, fine, we'll follow you, because they weren't involved. They weren't participating in the decision. They don't necessarily agree with the decision, whilst they may have some sympathy and feeling for justifying the change of, if you like, government practices and structure, political structure in Iran. They're far from happy with the way in which Donald Trump just bulldozed its way into it. In some respects, you might even say that it is like America's Hawaii, or 9/11, or whatever you want to call it. It's just that it's not done on the global stage.
Okay, and the next question about Russia, directly about Russia. Russia is building up its forces near NATO borders and preparing infrastructure for a possible attack.
Yeah.
Europe ready for a direct, not only confrontation, war with Russia? And who is actually prepared to fight today?
In Europe, you've got one single group called NATO, which is a defensive group which has been around for a long time and has always been ready and anticipated the potential of a war with Russia. Russia is aware of this. One of the important things is that you've got within NATO, you've got member states. Some are better prepared than others. For example, if you take the United Kingdom, the recent debacle in the Gulf, where Starmer, the British Prime Minister, ignored the request for support by Donald Trump, and at the same time indicated that the British military had been underfunded for decades, and therefore its equipment was dated and therefore not valueless, but not as good as it should be. And equally, the numbers of military personnel were far below the targets that the governments themselves have set. This isn't, in fairness, this is not entirely due to the Labour government that we have at the present moment. It is governments for generations, including the Tories, the Conservatives, who fail to actually make the budgets available to the defence sector to allow it to attract personnel and staff, and at the same time build new equipment, create new weapons, and also support services, because the military doesn't necessarily run just on its own, because it requires external support from the civilian population to function. So Finland, surprisingly, is very active in the intelligence sector, probably because its borders directly onto Russia, and there's a lot of information coming up from Finland. One of the things that Putin didn't anticipate when he invaded Ukraine was that he would actually expand the membership and also the landmass area of NATO, where you had two neutral countries, declared neutral countries, Sweden and Finland, joining NATO for self-preservation and self-defense. So you've got, I think, the majority of NATO ready to defend against the Russian attack. Another important point that we should not forget, and that is Ukraine's role so far. For the last 4 years, Ukraine has been defending Europe, and it has also demonstrated that the superpower Russia actually is not the superpower without its nuclear weapons, and therefore it's been able to hold Russia back at bay and keep them on the defensive as much as Ukraine being on the defensive. Admittedly, Ukraine has done it with the support of NATO insofar as military training and military equipment is concerned, and also the European Union with regards to funding in order that the economy within Ukraine survives and that the people of Ukraine survive. Not as well as they should do and could do without a war, but in light of the war, they're doing better than anybody anticipated.
Mhm. And while Russian troops are positioned near the borders of the European Union, Russia intelligence operatives and political strategies are already in Budapest,
Yes.
reportedly helping Viktor Orbán secure victory in the elections. And at the same time, till today, Orbán has been successfully blocking European Union aid to Ukraine. It is obvious that this obstruction will become even more effective if he wins the elections in April. And what threats would an Orbán victory pose to Europe?
That's an interesting question. In fact, it's one that I've considered previously, and my thoughts are that there are two sides to Orbán. There is the European side, where he plays de facto Vladimir Putin's ambassador in the European Union and also NATO, and there's the local election side, the electioneering, where he's using Ukraine as a negative and defensive for his lack of success anywhere, and he's also got a personal. To say he's jealous is a simplification. If you think I think it was 2019 or 2021, he put a bid in for 17 billion euros in support for Hungary. The European Union froze it. He hasn't had that money, and at the present moment, he's envious of Ukraine with not only the billions that it's getting insofar as military aid, but also the billions it's getting in for social aid and infrastructure repairs and so on and so forth. So he is a difficult man to read in some respects, but in other respects, we know that he is an ally of Vladimir Putin. We know that he supports the strategy that by being closer to Russia, and therefore when one is talking about Putin, you actually diffuse any potential future danger of an attack. Personally, I think that's naive. I won't say it's stupid, but it's most certainly naive. And what I'm surprised also about is that given his close alliance to a former Soviet, should we put it like that, given that Hungary led the uprising in 56 and then I think it was 91 against the Soviet Union, then it's really, I'm surprised that Hungarians even consider him suitable to be their prime minister.
Okay.
In answer to your question, which I'm sorry I forgot, the second part of your question, will it create bigger problems? I don't think so, because as we learned recently, the European Union has unblocked the funding for Ukraine, quite rightly, on the basis that the European Union voted in December 2025 to arrange the funding of a loan of 94 billion euros to Ukraine, and for Orbán to come in now and try to block it, they said that's the blackmail. It's also unethical, and therefore they've taken the decision in December to give the money as the supreme decision and ignore the rest of it. So Ukraine's in a good position. That shows for the first time that Orbán, his wish to follow Putin's wishes are being blocked, and I think you'll find that there will be a wake-up call at NATO as well when he starts to block things there or attempt to block things there. So yes, if he gets elected, it's not going to be easy. Will he get re-elected? Probably. But Europe and others are waking up to how to put him in his place, shall we say.
At the same time, Donald Trump is also seen as indirectly assisted Russia. The United States has lifted sanctions on Belarus Ministry of Finance, to state-owned banks and fertilizer-producing companies in exchange for the release of political prisoners.
Yep.
Such actions appear to be clear concession to state acting like a terrorist, taking hostages and then exchanging them for financial benefits. And in this case, those financial flows could ultimately support Russia's war against Ukraine, as Belarus may serve as a channel for funding the Russian military. And the question itself in this context, are Donald Trump and the United States still reliable allies for Europe, or are they increasingly aligned with Putin and Russia?
Difficult questions. I will do my best to answer them. When you mention Belarus, you automatically have to go back to Vladimir Putin, because he is the master, if you like, the master of Russia, and Belarus will do nothing without Putin's approval. The taking of hostage at check-ins or airport lounges or whatever is an old Russian practice that's been going on for years, so therefore there's nothing new in that. The reliability of Trump as an ally to the West or a friend of Putin, first of all, I think one has to consider, if not accept, that Donald Trump's only ally is Donald Trump. So therefore, whatever Donald Trump thinks he wants to do, Donald Trump will do. The same can be said of Vladimir Putin. A number of intelligence officers that I know and rely upon for information are convinced, although they don't necessarily have specific proof, but they believe, their opinion is that Putin, being the ex-KGB man that he is, has got a file on Donald Trump going back decades. We're talking 30, 40 years. And therefore, Mr. Trump, if this is the case, is aware of what the Russian president may or may not have on him. So therefore, that, I think, is a comfortable and easy way to understand why he tends to fluctuate between being supportive of Vladimir Putin's policies in some cases and others not. With regards to his relationship with Europe, he likes to play the tough man. He likes to play the bully, and unless he gets his way, he goes off into a corner and sulks. Trumpian politics may work in America for a certain part of the Americans, but they don't necessarily work on the international stage. And it's interesting that, again, this week, Americans are starting to question. They're not doing anything major, but they're starting to question some of the decisions that Trump has made, because the impact of his isolated or joint Israeli attack on Iran has resulted in problems for the American public, insofar as the cost of goods, gasoline, and other materials are increasing, and they don't like that. Equally, it's important to know that the European and Canadian, the other North American partner in NATO, again are standing up to Trump and saying, no, I'm not going to commit myself to a war that I didn't start. You do not make the foreign policy for my country. We do not believe that this was the right decision, and therefore you're on your own. Now, going back to an earlier comment, whether he gets his $200 billion from Congress, or whether he gets his $200 billion from other partners in NATO and elsewhere, is another thing. I mean, Trump looks at everything like a property dealer. I mean, if you study his thinking and if you study his actions and his words, he believes that everything is a deal. He pushed President Zelensky into a so-called peace deal with Russia, not because he wanted, not because he thought it was a good deal, but because he wanted to get the Nobel Peace Prize. That's all. That's a personal opinion, and I take ownership of that. But he forgets that Ukraine has been invaded. Ukraine has been attacked. What would he do if Canada attacked Maine? Would he just sit back and say, "Okay, you can take it. That's okay. That's fine. But we'll do a peace deal"? No, he wouldn't. He would respond with virtually attempting to capture and to take over and invade Canada. So what one has to understand that he is not a professional politician. He is not a professional diplomat. His training is in trading. He's a trader. He buys and sells, and that's all he does. And going into Iran is nothing more than a deal.
Okay. And the fifth question about Zelensky visit to the United Kingdom. Vladimir Zelensky visit to the United Kingdom included meetings with the King, with the Prime Minister, and had a speech to Parliament.
Yeah.
Why is London demonstrating such strong support for Zelensky? Is this symbolic, or does it signal a new level of partnership? What might that partnership look like going forward?
Well, I think the answer to both of those questions is yes. Zelensky is respected, and he's in some respects he's honored because of his stance and his defense of Ukraine and his leadership. Now, if I go back 4 years, I would never have heard of Volodymyr Zelensky. Here I am now, an admirer and a supporter. Putin invading Ukraine, and I'm sorry I'm changing the subject slightly, but it's important, I think, to say that invading Ukraine, Putin made a major mistake because he assumed, I think incorrectly, as it's proven, is that Zelensky, being a former actor, comedian, would run. He'd go away. He wouldn't stand up and fight, and people wouldn't support him. Putin got all of that wrong. Now, if you think of that image, that is the image that we in Britain have of this man. He is a humble man. You know, he doesn't get dressed up. He doesn't change his suit every 5 minutes. He doesn't have a different tie for every occasion. He is a humble man, and it's his humility and also the fact he has the respect of the Ukrainian people and the support of the Ukrainian people and military that has allowed Ukraine to stand against the Russian aggressor for 4 years and continues to stand today. Now, coming to your part of your question about London, the fact that he had an audience with the king is a sign of respect. It also, the fact that he presented him with an iPad that allowed the king to identify incoming missiles and other military information was an absolute perfect token of respect, because it wasn't a Cartier watch, it wasn't a gold bracelet, it was something very fundamental and simple, and something that I'm sure His Majesty appreciated. His speech in the House of Commons is not common. It doesn't happen every day. World leaders are invited on merit. So therefore, the fact that he was invited to do that and he did it successfully is another thing. With regards to the future relationship, yes, I think there will be a growth in the relationship between both our countries. I would like to believe so. The British government has previously, both through NATO and also privately, I don't mean privately, but individually, made a financial contribution, military contribution to Ukraine. As you know, many Ukrainian soldiers are in the United Kingdom undertaking training and everything else. The important thing that we have to understand is that because of Ukraine, the nature of war has changed. If it wasn't for Ukraine, you know, you would have people, Ukrainians on the battlefield. They are dying. I appreciate that, but but in excessive numbers than they are currently. Like the Russians, 1.3 million dead in 4 years. You know, now the art of war has changed, where now it's missiles, it's drones, it's aerial bombardment, and it's also focused. Your soldiers in the unmanned units that have these automatic mobile machine gun operations that can just shred the enemy to pieces without losing a single life. That again is another example of excellence. And if you hadn't done it, war would still be the same.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you, Professor Meehan, for this insightful conversation and for sharing your expertise with us today. To sum up, our discussion highlights a critical reality. Disinformation is no longer a peripheral issue. It is a central tool shaping modern geopolitics. Understanding how these narratives are constructed and the role Russia plays with this ecosystem is essential for building resilience in democratic societies.
Agreed.
And as always, awareness, critical thinking, and informed public discourse remain our strongest defenses. We're expecting for your likes and comments. Thank you for being with us on Russia Unmasked. I'm Andrii Bohdanovych, and see you next time.
Thank you.